For the last 2 decades, the Patriots have dominated the NFL, and it feels like Bill Belichick hasn't really done much wrong in New England. But he does have one downfall: his wide receivers. Not only has Belichick done an absolutely horrendous job at drafting the position, but he's made it clear that he doesn't even know what wide receivers to sign. The now big-name bust that has become the pinnacle of Belichick's drafting failures is N'Keal Harry. Belichick has only drafted a single wide receiver in the first round in New England, and that was N'Keal Harry in 2019. Safe to say that, he kind of regrets that decision. He suffered an ankle injury in training camp and landed on injured reserve. However, Harry did return in early November to do nothing. He didn't really do much. He played in just 7 games and caught 12 passes for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. In 2020, Harry had his best year of his tenure with the Patriots. He had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's it. Harry had 184 yards in 2021, but New England had enough and traded him to the Bears for a 5th-round pick. He's already made a big splash in Chicago, landing on injured reserve before the year even starts with a high ankle sprain. What makes Harry's disappointment so much worse is that the 2019 NFL draft was loaded. After Harry, there were so many good wide receivers that went. Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, and even Hunter Renfrow. The good news though, the Patriots still found a decent weapon. See, even when Belichick is missed at times, he's still somehow found some capable receivers, but it almost always comes by accident. After the draft, New England signed undrafted free agent Jacoby Myers, and he's been pretty damn solid for the team. In 3 years in the league, he has almost 2,000 yards, but has only gotten into the end zone twice. The last time the Patriots took a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds before Harry, it went bad too, and that was Malcolm Mitchell. Mitchell was taken in the 4th round in 2016, and he only lasted 2 years in the pros. He was impressive as a rookie, recording 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was the same year that the Patriots had their iconic comeback against the Falcons, and in the win, Mitchell caught 6 passes for 70 yards. Before the next year, Mitchell suffered a knee injury and landed on injured reserve, and ended up having to deal with non-stop knee injuries. Eventually, he ended up retiring in 2019 after only hitting the field in 1 season. Since, he's actually written some children's books. In 2013, New England tried their luck by drafting 2 wideouts in the first 4 rounds, 1 in the 2nd and 1 in the 4th. Both still sucked, starting with Aaron Dobson. New England used a 2nd rounder in 2013 on Dobson, who had a very promising rookie campaign with over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, despite only playing in 12 games after suffering a foot injury. He was up. Dobson dealt with a high ankle sprain in 2015 and was cut by New England ahead of 2016 before briefly spending some time in Detroit, his last time on an active roster. After his rookie year, Dobson only had 179 yards total in his career. To add some extra salt to the wounds, because why not, 2 wide receivers after Dobson was taken, the Chargers drafted Keenan Allen. Like Dobson, Josh Boyce was cut before the 2016 season too. In the 4th round, the Patriots drafted Josh Boyce. His rookie year, Boyce dealt with a toe injury, and he played in 9 games and had 121 yards. But that was the peak of his career. He was only active 1 more game in his entire career, but Boyce did technically win a ring when New England defeated Seattle though. He spent 2015 on injured reserve and was never on an active roster again. The Patriots had a successful draft back in 2010 because, Rob Gronkowski. But the search didn't go nearly as well after New England took Taylor Price. New England took Price in the 3rd round in 2010, and he caught 3 passes for 41 yards in the regular season finale as a rookie, but that ended up being his only receptions in New England. He got cut during 2011 and latched on with the Jaguars and was on injured reserve with the Seahawks in 2014. Price only had 5 catches in his career. The year before, New England used a 3rd-round pick on Brandon Tate. Tate was drafted by the Patriots in the 3rd round in 2009, and he didn't catch a single pass in his rookie year. And then, in 2010, he had 24 receptions for 432 yards and 3 touchdowns. After the season, in only 2 years in New England, he was waived. The Bengals claimed him, and in 5 years in Cincinnati, Tate had over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. He spent 2 years in Buffalo and had 200 yards and a touchdown before he was last seen on the Saints roster back in 2018. He never really turned into a great NFL wide receiver, but Tate made a living as a return man in the league. In his career, Tate had over 7,800 yards and 10 touchdowns returning kicks. To make matters worse, one pick after New England took Tate, the Steelers drafted Mike Wallace, who had over 8,000 yards and 57 touchdowns in his NFL career. Luckily for the Patriots though, they did get a good wide receiver at the 2009 NFL draft, although they took him as a quarterback, Julian Edelman. Second-round picks on wide receivers have been an absolute dumpster fire for New England, especially earlier in Belichick's tenure. The Patriots used the 36th pick on Chad Johnson in 2006, and to say that he wasn't successful would be an understatement. As a rookie, he had just 152 yards and 3 touchdowns. He tore his ACL in the AFC Championship game, and then in 2008, Johnson was cut. Over the rest of his pro career, Johnson only had a single catch for 19 yards, and that came in Denver. What's funny is that the Patriots actually traded up to take Johnson, and the pick they used to trade up became Greg Jennings, who had over 8,200 yards and 64 touchdowns and a long career that included 2 Pro Bowls and a Super Bowl. Back in 2003, the Patriots used a second-round pick on Bethel Johnson. The most impactful thing that he did in the NFL was return kickoffs. The reality is, he never really panned out as a wide receiver, like at all. He had 200 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns as a rookie, and that ended up being the best year of his career. Johnson only had 600 yards and 4 touchdowns in his entire career. After 3 years in New England, he was traded to the Saints for Jonathan Sullivan, an even bigger bust. Johnson and Anquan Bolden, who had 7 1,000-yard seasons in his pro career. Safe to say the Patriots haven't had great luck by drafting wide receivers, but they decided to shoot again this year by drafting Tyquan Thornton. Thornton was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and after being born and raised in Florida, he committed to the Gators, but he ended up flipping to Baylor. He had over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in his true freshman season, but he improved in a big way as a sophomore, recording almost 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. 2020 was a weird COVID season for everyone, and Thornton did kind of disappear and suffered an injury. In only 6 games, Thornton had just 158 yards and a single touchdown. Luckily, he bounced back in 2021. Thornton was second team All Big 12 after he had 948 yards and found the end zone 10 times. Thornton joins a roster with an okay at best wide receiver core that way overpays for some of their players, and that goes especially for Nelson Agholor. Agholor was drafted by the Eagles 20th overall back in 2015, and it's safe to say that he wasn't very good. His first 2 years in Philly were disappointing to say the least. He recorded about 600 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that's not what you want from a guy that you took in the first round. He did improve though. Over the next 2 seasons, Agholor had over 1,500 yards and found the end zone 12 times. Plus, he was on that team that won the Super Bowl in 2017. 2019 was Agholor's last year in Philadelphia. He had less than 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the offseason, he signed a 1-year deal with the Raiders and had a good season, recording 896 yards and 8 touchdowns. Agholor had shown some promise at times, but 6 years into the league, he still hadn't proven himself. Yet, the Patriots still gave him a 2-year, $26 million deal. In his first year in New England, Agholor had less than 500 yards and only 3 touchdowns. Safe to say that it's not going very well, but maybe Devontae Parker can find a way to be relevant again. He clearly has the talent, but I don't know that he can be that guy again that he was in Miami. New England has had success trading for wide receivers, but that was Randy Moss, not Devontae Parker. Bill Belichick has proven time and time again that he is awful at drafting wide receivers. It's why Tom Brady left and why Mac Jones could potentially fail.